doctor of psychiatry, whose deep interest in medical research and science began when she was a child. Her many years of work with dying patients has led her to found a unique center in California. It's called Shanti Nilaya.
Vincent Brahm has started an organization called Second Attempt at Living. He believes death to be a part of the life process and a fact of life. Elisabeth, I want to welcome you to Quest 4.
Thank you.
And I've noticed that your new book is called Quest for Living, so we have something in common to begin with. So our audience might be aware of who you are. You're a scientist, a doctor who spent, what, 12 years, basically before you became well known for your research around the world on patients who had died and had been resuscitated, and then you correlated their death experiences together, and of course you hit the news media and world fame with new teachings on death and life after death with a scientific background.
Or infamous, depending
Or infamous, depending
how you look at it.
How you look at it. After all the years of research and the work that you have done, I wonder if you could bring us up to date now. What are you still researching? What is the next step? Where has all this taken you?
I think the first thing I have to correct is that the things we have talked about in public were not death experiences, but near-death experiences. And it's important that people know that the things that are published up to date are really from people who have come back. And from a scientist's point of view, and I will always be a skeptical scientist, you understand, it's important to say that they're near-death experiences. We have started the first interviews with people who had a near-death experience many, many years ago, and at that time nobody talked about it. People were quite paranoid about talking about it. The most common denominator of the people who shared it were that, don't tell anybody, otherwise they think I flipped or I become psychotic or I'm hallucinating, or all sorts of incredible fears because of the general population's reaction to stories like this. You know, you don't talk about those things. At that time, we believed if we had 20 really good cases, we would publish it in a medical journal, and in neurology, and, you know, all over the world, for people to know that there are actually people who can tell us a glimpse of what it's like to experience the moment of death. We never published it because we got about 20,000 cases. And the more cases we collected, the more we began to realize that there's no sense in trying to convince anybody of it. Because the more data you have and the more you try to convince the world that death does not exist, the more rationalizations they come up with, and the more intellectualization, and the more all sorts of excuses why this may not be an explanation, and their fear prevents them from hearing the truth. So what we have been doing is to just share what we know, and those who are ready to hear it will hear it, and those who are not ready, when they make the transition, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to say, see, I told you so.
Yeah. It is amazing because I know what you have sacrificed yourself in order to pioneer this work, in order to pioneer this truth. I remember many years ago in the interviewing field, I had decided to quit the whole idea of interviewing. Just listening to you has changed my life, and I know that it has changed the life of so many people. And I don't know if you were aware, but last night on CBS, on a television show called House Calls, Vincent, this might interest you, they had, it's a comedy skit between doctors, and they did the research work that you had did on death and dying with one of the doctors who had died, who was a practical joker before this experience. He went through leaving the body, going through the tunnel that you described, meeting someone in the tunnel, a full awareness of what was being said. And all through the program, I thought at any minute they're going to poke fun at this scientific research, and they never did. They kept it a very serious idea. I've also seen this portrayed in Fantasy Island. So your work has really reached so many people and is beginning to totally change our concept about living.
You understand that when I started working with dying patients, I was spit in the face, I was humiliated, I was publicly discredited. How can a physician spend all their time with dying patients who are beyond medical help? And a decade later, I received 18 honorary doctor degrees for the same work from the same kind of institutions that spit in my face before. Now they try to destroy our credibility even more, that we go into an area where science and medicine has never ventured into. It's easier for us to go to Mars to try to find out if there is life on Mars, when people don't even know what life on Earth is all about. And in 10 years from now, everybody will know it as a fact. It's very simple, very uncomplicated. Anybody who really wants and is ready to hear the truth can find out. It is the simplest research that anybody can do.
Dr. Ross, when you talk about it being near death, and you qualified that, what then is the difference between the works that have been collected from people who claim to have lived once before? And some of that work has some credibility, where a child can go to a residence and can talk about the furnishings and the life of the deceased person there.
But you see, what they are not telling you is what happened between the near-death experience when you go through the phenomena of transition. Many people use a tunnel or have a tunnel. My own experience was not the tunnel. Very few of my patients have gone through a tunnel. That is very culturally and personally determined. I'm from Switzerland and I love mountains and wildflowers. And instead of going through a tunnel, I went over a mountain pass with wildflowers. Once you see the light, which is pure spiritual energy, people call that Christ or God. From that moment on, when you have to review and evaluate your total existence, every word, every thought, and every deed, until you are reborn into another physical body, like the stories tell that you mentioned, the in-between is never mentioned anywhere. You see, to me, those are not stories of what death is all about. Those are only stories to try to verify reincarnation. That is a very different issue.
Do you subscribe to reincarnation?
Yeah, but I'd rather try to talk about this in context, not just in a very general kind of thing.
So then the near-death experience is what we're saying, that people whose vital signs for some period had stopped and were resuscitated. So that's to identify the near-death.
Yes,
but
I think it might help if I just summarize the common denominators of what every single human being will experience at the moment of physical death, where we as physicians declare them without vital signs, okay? And it is important to know that this is true of all human beings all over the world, independent of age or sex or race or creed or background. It's a human kind of phenomena. Our youngest was 2 years old and the oldest is in the late 90s. So. And we have had people who committed suicide. We have had murder victims. We have had slow lingering deaths or acute coronary. So the mode of death also does not matter at that time. The experience of death is the same. What happens afterwards, that differs depending on whether you have taken a life or taken your own life. But the experience of death is the same for all human beings. The first thing you realize is that you shed your physical body like a butterfly sheds a cocoon, and you are totally aware of absolutely everything that happens in the environment. And I'm not using the word you're conscious, because you're not conscious. Your brain has stopped functioning. You may have a flat brainwave, flat EEG. It's an awareness, a seeing, a hearing, a being totally aware of everything, though the eyes are closed and there are no vital signs. The seeing and hearing, the best way I can describe it is like you see in a dream when you're in bed and have your eyes closed. It's that kind of an awareness. There is no fear, no panic, no anxiety attached to it. You may see your body on a highway with an amputated leg, or crashed in a car seat and people trying to get you out with blow torches, and you watch this, but in a, I want to say, in a detached way. There's no panic or anxiety or, oh my God, what is happening to me? It's almost like you would watch a television movie. And then you begin to be aware that you're whole. You may see your amputated leg on a highway. You may see a mutilated body after a homicide attempt or a suicide attempt or an accident. My multiple sclerosis patients, with whom I worked the most, and I love them dearly, who have been in wheelchairs for months and months, and many of them have blurred speech and blurred vision and haven't been able to move. The first thing they always say, Dr. Ross, I was able to sing and dance again. So you're always whole, and it's important to know that this is not a physical body. This is an ethereal body and not the permanent form. This is a very temporary form that only lasts a few moments. It is to help you familiarize yourself and not to be afraid of this drastic change. The last thing that people then are aware, that you cannot die alone. And there are 3 different reasons why you cannot die alone.
Okay, we're going to come back in just a few minutes and listen to those 3 reasons. And with Elisabeth today is Vincent Brom, who literally had the death experience. So we will be talking to him. This is Psychic Phenomena in quest for the answers about living and dying. We'll be right back.
In order to complete the thought that Dr. Ross was giving us, which is the common denominator among all those who experience the near-death experience, I would like to go right back to you, Dr. Ross, and let you complete your sentences on that.
There are 3 reasons that you cannot die alone. And I think God created man in such a way that the graduation of life, when we make the transition, should literally be a celebration and not something we fear. And to reassure us that this is not a scary, lonely, miserable thing, there are a triplicate reassurance that you cannot die alone. One of them, and that you can verify with young dying children especially, is that when you shed your physical body, which all of us do during certain types of sleep almost every night, many people have spontaneous out-of-body experiences, or you can do it iatrogenically with the help of a research laboratory. When you shed your physical body, you exist in a realm where there is no space and no time. Young dying children with whom I work 70 hours a week perhaps, know that, because shortly before they die, they become aware of their out-of-body experiences, and they discover that they are not alone in a hospital, for example, that they can think of mommy and daddy and they're with mommy and daddy, even if they would live 1,000 miles away. And so what they do very often, and those are for slow lingering illnesses where children have time to prepare for it, what they do is, when they become aware that death is imminent and they're preconsciously very aware of it, irrelevant of age, they very often send mommies home. Say, Mommy, you look very tired. Why don't you go home and take a shower? Take a rest. I'm really all right now. And you understand, we understand this in our language, but they speak symbolic language. And then Mommy goes home, takes a shower, rests for a while, and then a phone call comes, I'm sorry, Mrs. So-and-so, Susie just died. And those parents can pull their hair out that they didn't stick it out another hour or 2. And little did they know that they should not feel guilty. It is much easier for a child to die that way. You understand how hard it is for a man to die when a wife leans over the side rail and says, honey, don't die on me, I can't live without you.
Oh, yes.
We make them guilty for dying on us. And if you multiply this by 1,000, you understand how hard it is to lose a child. So let's just send them home, because they know the moment their butterflies out of the cocoon, they can be with mommy or daddy or
Whenever they want.
anybody. That's one reason. That's connected to the life in the physical. The other reason is that you're always met by those you have loved who preceded you in death. With children, it's very often a grandma or a grandpa or a neighbor's child or somebody. They're very often religious figures. Our youngest child was a 2-year-old who saw Mary and Jesus, and Mary kept telling him, the time is not right, you have to go back. And he tried to ignore her, which is very typical of 2-year-olds. And finally, Mary apparently took him gently by the wrist and pulled him away and said, you just have to go back to your mommy. You have to save your mommy from the fire. And Peter opened his eyes at that moment and said to Mommy, you know, Mommy, when she told me that, I ran all the way back home. And this boy is still living. This is 15 years ago now. You understand that the Jewish boy would not likely see Jesus, or a Protestant boy would not see Mary. You always see the person you have loved the most who preceded you in death. And the third reason is that all human beings, the moment they are born, are assigned what Christians call guardian angels, what many other people call guides or entities, and their sole purpose is to guide you, to direct you, to help you to fulfill your own destiny, and every human being has that. and they're with you 24 hours a day. They're never more than 2 feet away from you, and they're also there when you make the transition. A lot of people worry, you know, what happens to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds who still have their grandparents and their parents and brothers and sisters. They're very familiar when they make the transition, because only in the physical world are they that young. You know, they have a whole group of their old friends whom they met before they were even born.
If I was listening to you, I remember my mother came out to visit me and told me that she was going to go home and die, and just the way she was going to do it. And in her Bible, she had underlined the words, "Do not be against me for wishing to depart from you," was taken from Ruth. And you're pointing out that I had a very serious automobile accident where I was thrown out of my car and impact on the freeway, and the car was demolished, and it was quite a frightening thing. And I had the experience of standing outside my body, and I saw the flares, and I saw the car, and I saw everything. There was no pain, no nothing. And it's kind of hard to explain to somebody, and Vincent, maybe you can share this with our audience. It's hard to explain to someone who's standing over a hospital bed and resuscitators are gone, or open heart surgery, or last this or last that, and to realize that your loved one is not in pain. I found that you're just not home physically to that. In your death experience, I wonder if you'd just freely tell us what you experienced, what you felt, and where you are now with it.
I had an occasion in 1964 to undergo a series of surgeries, and it was the 4th surgery that I had my separation. And I was in the operating room. They took me up like at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 20 minutes after 8, the separation occurred. In those days, they didn't have the little beepers and the electronics to monitor life. But at the time of the separation, I encompassed the whole room. I was like face to face with the clock. I was like face to face with the lights overhead, the walls. I was everywhere but on the floor. And I did settle down near the lights overhead and watched the doctors and the nurses trying to resuscitate the body. They carried this exercise on for about a period of 15 to 20 minutes, and finally they just give up. They just said that he's gone. And they covered the body with the sheet, and they departed from the room. And the whole time I stayed right there. And I tried to make it known that I was not dead for them not to leave, but I wasn't in a state of panic or fear of anxiety or anything like that at all. I was just simply stating that I'm not dead. But nobody hears because you have no physical body, you know, nothing to relate to at all. So they covered the body up, and I was there the whole time, and a couple aides come to get me, orderlies, and they put me on the little gurney, took me downstairs to the hospital morgue, and they had a little table downstairs, and they put me there, and all the way down the elevator I kept saying, "Well, fellas, I'm not dead," you know, but I didn't say take me back, or I still was not in a state of panic. And I was down in the hospital morgue for about an hour or so, and when I was there was a guy that come through the room. Later I was to find out it was an emergency room doctor. And I stated to him that I was not dead, but he didn't even turn or nothing. He just kept going right up the aisle. So 2 people come from the county to get the body. And one of the gentlemen says, "I don't think we ought to take this body away till somebody looks at it," because the blood had not started to coagulate, and I guess the coldness or rigor mortis had not started to set in to whatever degree it does at that time. So the other guy went to get the emergency room doctor. He come back and he said, "We better have somebody look at this guy." So they put me on the table, and they took me back down the hallway. And when they put my body back on the elevator, I separated to the religious or spiritual experience at that time. And there I appeared in what I call wheat field. It could have been anywhere in the world. And I laid like on the ground, and I could look up and see the wheat shafts blowing above me. And it seemed like I had a whole body, because I could look down and see a matted area in the wheat, but you know, there's nobody there. And it was like I was looking at the sky all the time. Now, I did not experience the bright light, but it was a very sunny day, just like Southern California. And there was no clouds in the sky. And I could not hear the wind, but I could see the wheat like this. And as I sort of floated up towards the top of the shafts, this figure appeared on the hill. And the figure had 3 dimensions, and but he did not have human features as such. Like, I couldn't say whether he had blue eyes or brown eyes or hair or anything like that. You know, he looked like somebody with a long hair and a long spiritual robe standing there. And anyway, as I arose to the top of the wheat shafts, this hand just come and placed itself over my face and just lowered me right back down. When I hit the ground, I woke up in my hospital room. And at that time, I was back in pain and all that. But the whole time, I was very peaceful. And I cannot understand why, if whoever had the power to put life back in me, you know, at times I wonder why they didn't keep me at the time. Why put me back on earth to go through the miseries and the anxieties of living when death is so peaceful.
Vincent, how long was this period of time? That
Altogether it was around 2 hours.
So you were in that state, alternate state for 2 hours.
Yeah,
See, that to me is incredible. When I listen to you, I'm familiar with Charles Tart's work. I don't know if you know Dr. Tart, in working at Davis University on astral projection. And finally, he had his work accepted in the Science Journal and a beautiful paper on it. Would it be beneficial from your experience of being outside of your body, or you as a researcher, to say that maybe we ought to set up a way that we could practice astral projection? Would it make a difference if we could step out of our body, or you say no?
No. Everybody's doing it anyway, and if you need conscious awareness, you always get what you need, not what you want. If people could get that at their own free will, it would be more misuse than nuclear weapons.
Astral projection could have more misuse than nuclear weapons.
Absolutely.
I think I understand that.
You will always get what you need, not what you want. And thank God people can't do this at free will.
Well, some claim, however, that they can. And there are kits that you can send away for, you know, that can send you into astral projection.
Yes,
Leave their fraudulent.
we have enough help and guidance that those who misuse it will lose their gifts very quickly. Thank God. Yes, it is easy to learn.
I've always seen
not for everybody.
The people that have experienced this and practice it as a religion never seem to me to have much happiness going for them. There seems to be an imbalance in their energy. I don't know how to explain it, that they're not in or out of their bodies, and I always find it at best dangerous. But then listening to Vincent, and we'll come back and let you answer this, I see you're jumping, Elizabeth, there. But listening to it, that out-of-the-body experience, which allows you to know that you're more than the physical body, and I'm sure we'll be talking about the society that you started to help people readjust themselves about living after you've had such an experience. Right. This is in Quest for, and we feel extremely fortunate to be in conversation with Dr. Elisabeth Kübler-Ross and Vincent Brahm. We'll be right back with Living. Stay with us. We are in conversation with Dr. Elisabeth Kübler-Ross and Vincent Brahm, and we're discussing the near-death experience, which I guess is the total, absolute feeling of life, from what you're saying. Elizabeth, you said that you wanted to talk about something that you mentioned. There were 3 stages of death, and Vincent had only gone through 2 stages.
Yeah, I think it's very important because people who are very frightened about this new research are beginning to publish papers and stories and books about people who have gone through hell and brimstone and had horrible, nightmarish experiences. And you have to understand scientifically why these people collect such material and where it comes from. And if I can talk like a psychiatrist for a second, you have to know the difference between real and reality. And I'm using your example. I think it's easiest to explain. When you die, you go through 3 steps, 3 stages of the death experience. You have your physical energy, your physical body, you leave. And I'm using the language I use with my little children. When a butterfly leaves the cocoon, the butterfly that you experience, he saw himself as a total body in a cornfield. That is created no longer with a physical energy field, but in a psychic energy field. And that is a perfect simulate of your body. Blind people can see, deaf mutes can hear and speak. If you have been amputated, you have your legs. You're always perfect. And you can verify this. I verified this with blind people who can tell me what you wear, what jewelry, what ring, what watch you wear. And totally blind people who don't have light perception cannot fake that, okay? You do not have this simulate of perfect body for a long time. Then you move out from the physical energy out of the psychic energy into the spiritual energy. And that's when people begin to see the light. Man can only manipulate and control physical and psychic energy. And because it's manipulatable, can you say that?
Sure.
By man, it can be used as a gift and a blessing, or it could be used as a curse. It can be manipulated. If you are totally full of fear and panic, and you have been raised with hell and brimstone stories and Satan, your fears create a verifiable Satan and nightmarish experiences. This is very real to the people, but it's not reality. It's like people on LSD see horrible things or very beautiful things, and to them it's very real, but it's not reality. It's created by the mind and is a projection of man's fears. Once you leave, and that lasts a very short time, once you leave the physical and the psychic energy field, and you go, using Moody's description, through the tunnel, when you approach the light, that is spiritual energy that is created by God and can never be touched or manipulated by human beings. So even those who have been conditioned with horror stories of hell and brimstone and project their own fears, the second, the instant they leave the man-influenced area and begin to see the light, it is nothing but love, unconditional love, compassion and understanding. And those people who have been in the presence of the light, and I have been there, you can never, ever, ever be afraid of death. All you remember forever and ever and ever is the experience of the most undescribable, unconditional love that there are no words to describe. And then naturally you are with all the people who love you and whom you have
Could I
loved.
step way far out with you for a minute? I'm not asking you to answer this as a scientist or anything, but just something as I'm listening to you. I know that when we speak, we create sound. A voice pattern that is original to me and only me. No matter how many speak, I can be identified by my voice. I'm listening to science saying that every sound created exists somewhere in the universe. We never erase it. So everything I've ever said is out there somewhere with my voice pattern collected together. And I've always had the feeling at the moment of death, I'm going to step in to whatever I said verbally will mesh in the universe, and I will have to dwell in that. Then at the same time I hear you saying this, it is according to what I've said and how I see it and how I understand it is whether I'm going to go to my concept of heaven or my concept of hell. That really is a self-creation.
Not quite so. Yeah, it is a self-creation, and at the end of your physical existence, your life's value or preciousness, you will become aware, is nothing else but the consequences of every choice you have ever taken every single day and every single moment of your entire life. And it is you who makes misery, depression, bitterness, resentment, or love and sharing, compassion and understanding. So what your life is at the moment of death is what you created. It is a consequence of every single little choice that you have taken every day of your life.
Then Vincent's creation was a direct result of his consciousness. What he saw, the wheat field and everything, was an indication of where he was consciously.
Well, you see, we always get what we are most familiar with and what we love the most. I'm not an ocean person because I'm from Switzerland, from the mountains. So I got a mountain pass with wildflowers, which to me are the most gorgeous flowers in the world. I don't know if you're a farmer or have come from farm country.
Yes,
You see,
So
he
wheat
gets
fields
a
would be
wheat field.
significant to you.
I mean, it's always, you get what is most comfortable and most familiar with you. The little boy I told you about, the 2-year-old, his great love with Jesus and Mary, he came from a very practicing Catholic family.
I see.
So what does he get? Something that he's familiar
The
with.
indoctrination.
He gets Mary and Jesus.
There's so much I want to ask you. You mentioned guides and you mentioned, okay, these that exist and...
Can I answer your first question first? In the presence of the light, which some people call Christ, some people call God, others who don't believe in Christ or God call it light or love. In that presence, when you're totally surrounded with compassion, understanding, and unconditional love, you and you alone have to review, like you would review this film, every thought, every deed, and every word you have ever spoken. And you evaluate and review with compassion, with understanding, with love for yourself, including your weaknesses, your hang-ups, your negative conditioning, and you will begin to understand why many, many times, if not most of the time in your life, you have taken a lower choice instead of the highest choice. And you will then review whether you have learned the lessons that you made a commitment before you were born, whether you're able to graduate. If you understand, school life in the physical is a very short span of our total existence. It is nothing else like, I'm going to college, or I want to become a physician, and I'm going to choose which medical school suits me the best, which teachers I would like the most in obstetrics and surgery and this and that. I choose my, what you call it in the United States, your major and your minor.
Yeah.
And you choose the school where you have the absolute optimal conditions to become what your big dream is. And that's what life is all about. Before we're born, we choose our major, we choose our minor, we choose what we want to learn, what tests we have to pass, what lessons we have to learn before we can graduate. And death, if it doesn't happen accidentally by the gamble of life, death is nothing else but a graduation and should be celebrated.
Those people who have returned from the near-death experience that got to the third stage, do they radically change their lives? Their life?
From the thousands of people we asked, those have changed the most who have seen the light. Once you have seen that, your
And had the
faith,
chance
if you
to
have had
review.
no faith before, is restored. You have an inner sense and knowledge of the greatness of life, of the incredible guidance and love that we're surrounded with. It's a sense of awe and much more respect for life, and all the little trivial things that you waste 90% of your energy on worrying about tomorrow changes from living 90% in the now and suddenly seeing a sunset again or hear a bird sing. And not worrying about the trivialities. You spend about 10% in the tomorrows. Your life has changed.
100%.
Yes.
Everybody goes through it. I'll say 99% of them. I haven't found one yet that hasn't gone very positive after.
You formed a society that corresponds with the people that have had the experience?
Yes, what I'm doing is collecting experiences, and my ultimate vision is to contact everybody in the world, regardless of their religious affiliation or their nationality or whatever, that's had the experience. But
and see how they're relating it now to their present
compare,
life.
right.
So you're just setting up like an archive for this material?
That, yes. And I'd like to be able to be the center of information in time to come, where all the stories are, the narratives, and all the information.
That's a great task.
I know.
That's
and
a great task.
I know it seems impossible.
You didn't have that third step then of evaluating yourself and your actions or the judgment that Elisabeth was talking. That is a third step you're talking about, right?
That very rarely occurs because you are still connected to the cocoon. And only when the connecting link is severed, most people have that third stage.
And most people don't come back after that, is what
That's
you're saying,
right.
too. But
He
some
did
do.
not need that.
Okay. But some people do come back from that stage.
Yes, they get the glimpse. You cannot tolerate it for more than a few seconds.
Why? Wait. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Why can't you tolerate it?
It is much too much for human beings to
Too
comprehend.
intense.
Frequency's
You
too
can
high.
get the glimpse of it. That's enough. That lasts your lifetime.
When we come back, I'm going to give you the words so we can think about it. Predestination. I heard a little bit of that in what you were saying. And like we choose our parents. We say, I didn't ask to be born. And now our parents say back, oh, yes, you did. We didn't choose you as much as you choose us. You're as big a surprise to us as we are to you. So I hear that and a little bit what you're saying. And I'd still like to talk a little bit about the guides or the guardian angels and the fact that I hear you saying, or at least I hope you do, that they walk with man and are with man in life and in death. This is Quest 4. We are looking for the answers to not only this life, but the ongoing thought of eternity. We'll be right back with Elisabeth Kübler-Ross. Welcome back to Quest 4. when we were leaving, we were saying, let's go with the predestination idea and then into the angels idea, predestination.
That depends very much on what people call predestination. When we are born all from the same source, from the same God, and all of mankind will return to the same God, in the spiritual energy, which is not man-manipulated, there's no discrimination. All we have to do is learn unconditional love and learn the lessons that the physical life has to offer, and then we're allowed to graduate. We go through postgraduate training then and eventually return to God. The shortest time that a human being has ever done that, from birth from God and return to God, was 32 years. And one is still around, it's over 2 million years and has not graduated yet. So you have a wide range of chances over and over and over again. That is God's grace and mercy. There's no discrimination. Some are slow learners and others are fast learners. When we are born, say, I'm using an extreme example. Use Hitler as an example. Most people know Hitler, know all the misdeeds he did. My work started in the concentration camps in Majdanek, where 960,000 children were killed and murdered and put in gas chambers. So he obviously did not learn his lessons and obviously did not practice unconditional love. When he reviews his life, surrounded with love, unconditional love, in spite of all his misdeeds, he will understand why he became the way he became, that the whole nation supported his misdeeds, and his own arrogance, which naturally covered up a lot of inferiority, made him this very sick man. And he will then know that he has no choice but to re-enter a physical life and pass the lessons that he missed. One of his lessons that I'm sure he has to learn is to be a leader of man. All of us have to learn to be a leader of man.
Did the people that suffered under Hitler have a lesson to learn too then? Or do we say that these things are going to happen to us haphazardly? Or is there, like, let me try something on you, and I might get in trouble for this. I think when we talked about reincarnation, which I don't want to get into, but life patterns, what about all the Romans that sat into the amphitheater and went like this, kill the Christians, crucify them, throw the lion while they're eating their grapes? Is there some kind of, they saying, I've got to experience this? Could Hitler have addressed himself to 6 million Romans who did this to Christians?
No. It was the gamble of life that they happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
That simple.
That is the gamble of life, yes.
So
you understand, say if a 10-year-old child died and lost literally 10 years of a lifetime, 10 years in the other world, for lack of a better language, is like 1 day in your life, in your language. It is a very, very short span of your total existence. And all the positive experiences that child has had are not in vain. The tragedy is naturally for the families. But they too have the choice to remain bitter for the rest of their life and resentful and negative, or to use this as a windstorm of life and grow in compassion and understanding and against discrimination and against hate. That again can be used as a growth experience. It does not happen in order for the parents to have a growth experience. That would be a very punitive approach. What comes from God can never be punitive or judgmental or critical. It is always with love. To go back to Hitler, he will have to re-enter a physical body. He will wait 100 years or 1,000 years or 5,000 years, because time does not exist in that way. And he will find parents and a country and an environment where there is an incredibly great chance that he will have an opportunity to be a leader of man and make up for all the misdeeds. Because what you call it, what we sow, we reap. We are responsible for the consequences of our choices. It does not mean that, like a Caesar could become an Abraham Lincoln. It does not mean that Hitler has to become another Abraham Lincoln. He could become, for example, a leader of a group of Boy Scouts. It does not matter how big you are. It only matters how you do what you do.
But then you're saying that this was Hitler's first go-round.
No, I did not say that.
Well, but you mean he could have been something else even before he was
It could
Hitler?
have been his 10,000th
I get you.
go-round. That I did not say.
Okay, that's what I
That you
wanted to
do not
clarify.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why aren't we given the gift of this knowledge when we're born?
Wouldn't that be ridiculous? Does your teacher give you all the exam questions before an exam,
Gives you all the information, yes.
but not the answers?
Yes, gives you
understand-
the answers, but not the questions. And we as human beings are left with questions and no answers.
Life is supposed to be a challenge and not a threat. If you had all the answers, if you would know exactly what you have to do, it would be so uninspiring and so unchallenging that there would be no growth. The purpose of life is to grow and to contribute to the evolution of man, and you would never grow. Look at kids who have everything, who are raised like plants in a greenhouse, with constant temperature and moisture and everything. Put the plant like this outside in a bitter cold and they wither away. Look at those who have gone through the windstorms of life, the people. Look how strong they are when a catastrophic event happens. My teacher said, my most favorite saying, he said, should you shield the canyons from the windstorms, you would never see the beauty of their carvings. Have you ever seen an old man or an old woman in a nursing home with a million wrinkles, and every wrinkle tells a story of their life, and the greatness in those people, and the depth in those people, and the wisdom in those people?
Yeah. The new experience, it not knowing, I've always thought, like horses, that you have to put blinkers on in order to get our attention, in order to make us pay attention, to fully experience what we're going through. I'm kind of glad I don't know anything.
But do you understand, if you're not on a track,
Yeah.
you know it. And if you make a detour, that's wonderful. It doesn't matter, because if you climb a mountain this way or this way, you will eventually get there anyway. And those who go around, they go a bit slower, but look how many experiences they have on their detour. Maybe they see an Edelweiss, or a sunrise from a different angle, or they find somebody who slipped and broke their foot. Nothing is for nothing. It is not a race. It is not competition. It's to grow and accept every challenge in life as a new life experience.
I like in particular what you said, and I'm going to interrupt you here because we have about 3 minutes and I want to still get to those angels. I like what you said. It's not the grandeur of what you're doing, but it's how you're doing it. Whether it be 10 people or 10,000 doesn't matter. It's that motivation and that intention that you're doing. And
If a
that,
black
to me, is
cleaning woman
yeah.
goes into a patient's room and smiles at them and loves them, she may do more for that patient
Yes.
than a whole staff in a
Yes.
hospital,
Yes.
with all the money and equipment and knowledge and whatnot.
In all due respect, in 3 minutes, angels, guides, higher beings that look
The
at
moment we're born, the moment our soul enters the physical body, which is when we take our first breath, at the same instant we are assigned our own guardian angels or guides. At least one, many people have more. People who are constantly in troubles like me need a whole bunch of them, male and female. They are people who have lived in the physical world and have understanding and compassion about how tough and difficult it is. And they choose as their own, I want to call it postgraduate work, to guide somebody who is, it's like a high school kid helping a first grader. And they are with you 24 hours a day. They're never more than 2 feet away from you. They impinge on you, they try to guide you. In your sleep, they try to connect with you, to tell you that you are making a horrible mistake or which direction you go. You've ever had brainstorms? It suddenly hits you an answer. That's
I
their
see.
work.
There it is.
Thank them for it,
Yeah.
because they help you day and night.
More accidents have caused scientific discoveries, and they always...
Because all these discoveries are already there, in the archives of knowledge. That's where everything you have ever done and everything you have ever thought is all registered. It's like a big computer system.
In studying saints and mystics and angels, which have always fascinated me of all religions, there was one young woman who was a saint in the Catholic Church, St. Teresa of the Little Flower, And her greatest statement was, "Let me spend my heaven doing good upon earth." And as you talk about this, surely I have felt my mother and my father, people who have loved me, not only high spirits, but I have always felt the love and protection of something around me. And it would be kind of nice if scientists like yourself and people like you, Vincent, who have had the experience, that could bring us together to allow us to know that that great outer and inner world that can be connected.
Little children know that very well. They call them the playmates.
Sure.
And they
all
always
have them.
communicate and talk to them.
You know, up until the 4th grade of school, we used to have to sit on one side of our desk to make room for our guardian angel on the other in Catholic school, because your guardian angel always sat with you. But by the time you got to the 5th grade, you got smacked with the ruler and told, "Get to the middle of your desk."
They
And
don't
all of a
need any
sudden,
space.
nobody told you what happened to your guardian angel, except that at this point, the guardian angel was long gone. I'm glad that your work brings that idea back to us. That is important. Vincent, you had any experience even close to that? We've got 30 seconds in order to do it.
With a guardian angel.
Yeah.
He must have been the one to put me back in my body, you know.
The hand that came over your
With the hand over the
face?
face, right.
All right.
Yeah.
This is Quest 4 in conversation with Elisabeth
Intense.
Kübler-Ross and Vincent Brahm. I've certainly enjoyed it. You're a beautiful lady. Quest for living, not only now but later. This is Quest 4.